permit me here and now to promise as a good comrade and a fellow artist that I will not report any of this, whatever it is, to the police.
Welcome to Abandoned Albums, the documentary podcast. Each week, our intrepid group of researchers and music archivists dig through the record crates of the world, finding those albums that may have been lost over time. If a new artist is discovered along the way, that's all the better. Using a patent-pending algorithm and spirited debate, we pick one album to discuss. Once that is settled, we will invite the artists to Thunder Love Studio to chat with your hosts, Keith R. Higgins and Jeff Calhoun. When we're lucky, they say yes. Our mission with Abandoned Albums is simple: to make sure artists' recorded work remains, or in some cases, lands on, the cultural radar. We invite you to sit back and relax. Thank you for joining us.
You know, we've discussed on other episodes that Jeff and I have similar tastes. There is enough that overlaps, and enough that doesn't, that keeps this project exciting. When we started talking about our 100th episode, we each came up with our dream list. And much to our amazement, more than one of each of ours we'd already spoken with. So we threw feelers out to Robert Plant and Bono, who did not get back to us by the time we had to record. After a rather quick debate, we both agreed that it was going to be The Call, a band we both loved and who we had tried to book last year. This time, with a successful Kickstarter under their belt, they are releasing new music on a project called The Lost Tapes. Some old tapes in good condition were discovered with the late Michael Bean's vocal track in excellent condition. These aren't B-sides or toss-aways. As Tom said in our conversation, they're songs that just didn't fit thematically on the album they were working on. Anyway, Jeff and I were stoked when keyboard player Jim Goodwin and guitar player Tom Ferrier agreed to speak with us. Drummer Scott Music couldn't make it. What a great way to cross this 100-episode threshold. Many thanks to Jim and Tom, and extra special thanks to all of you for listening. Here's our conversation with Jim and Tom of The Call.
It's just the normal noises in here.
Have you guys heard our latest record that we're trying to promote, The Lost
I heard the single. I did.
Okay,
Yep.
You heard Welcome to My World.
Yep. I haven't heard the whole album. In fact, I didn't find out about the Kickstarter until, I think like 2 or 3 days before it closed.
Did you hear about it from Peter Gabriel?
Not from Peter Gabriel. I think it was somebody I follow on Instagram.
All right.
You know, and I don't follow Peter Gabriel. But
shame on you.
Here's The Call's guitarist Tom Ferrier.
We're a really small operation, you know, and we didn't have a lot of places to go with it, and so our fans found it, and we tried to get out to as many people as we could. But yeah, we were a pretty small operation. There's just the three of us in the band, that are left, and 2 guys helping us.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
And to that end, the Kickstarter and the campaign and the set is available on Bandcamp, which we'll link to in our show notes.
Right.
Includes remastered, reconciled, remastered Into the Woods, as well as a new record, The Lost Tapes.
Lost Tapes, yes.
Now, if we go all the way back, Tom, you did some work with Phil Seymour.
We did some work with Phil Seymour. He came out from Oklahoma. He was a friend of Scott's.
Okay.
And I think they were both from Tulsa. And he was looking for a backup band. And so he called us because he was going to go into LA and do some demos. And this was kind of pre-call. I had joined this band that was around for about 3 or 4 years, and it was called Airtight. And had another keyboard player. It was a totally different vibe. I joined that band, and somewhere along the line, the keyboard player left, and we were a 3-piece. And then Phil got a hold of us and wanted us to come down to LA and do some demos for him. And that's where we met Denny Cordell, who was his manager. And that's where all that kind of craziness started, with Shelter Records that we were on for about 5 minutes. Eventually ended up selling us to Polygram.
Okay.
He got us a deal, It took a lot, though.
The reason I mention it, Phil Seymour is revered, for those who don't know, is revered in the power pop community. And,
really?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And there are some friends of ours who listen to the show are power pop enthusiasts. So connecting the two will be a bonus for us.
He was a very, fun guy. And we felt kind of bad because when we first did these sessions, kind of the momentum shifted away from Phil to us.
Yeah.
And we felt a little weird about that. But, Phil went on, I guess, to have his own career. But that was a starting point.
One of the songs you served as the backup band on If You Don't Want My Love.
Was that one of Phil's songs?
Yeah. Well, it's written by Phil Spector and John Prine, but it came out on a 2020 release, and allegedly you guys are the backing band. Yeah, that's what the internet told me, so it must be true. Here's keyboard player Jim Goodwin.
Phil Spector and John Prine? It's quite a combo.
I got to write that down. Now, what was the name of
It's
that?
called If You Don't Want My Love.
You Don't Want My Love.
Yeah, and it's on the 2020 Phil Seymour album of the same name.
Keith, you might be a record nerd.
Me?
Yeah.
I'm a research nerd at this point. I did a lot of digging up on you guys.
Might be. I guess 3 of the songs on the Lost Tape album were after I joined this band Airtight, and we did that little stint with Phil, and we came back and started writing songs kind of as a 3-piece. And to get our first deal, we kind of we went in the studio and did a really stripped down version of 7 or 8 songs, and 3 of them are on this new record. And it got our deal and really started us going, because that's what Denny Cordell said to us. He goes, do you have anything? And we didn't really have anything, so we went in and rushed this out. And with that, we were able to get our first deal, and 3 of those songs are on the Lost Tapes. What was cool about the Lost Tapes is I found all these songs that I had in my closet and stuff, literally on tapes.
Cassette tapes?
Cassette tapes. Some of them 40 years old. And with technology being what it is, you can take these things into a good studio and they can bring them all back to life, digitize them, and then you can work with them again. And that's kind of what we were able to do. We had Jimmy come down, who wasn't in the band in the late 70s, come down and put his groovy keyboard parts on. So it just became a full-on call sound again. And it goes from the late 70s through the 90s. So it's a good retrospect of the band. And they were all songs that almost made it on albums, but they didn't. And it wasn't because they sucked. It was because And we just had a couple of extras always, and maybe it just didn't fit in with whatever theme we were trying to go for, loose concept or whatever. In the case of Jimmy's song, it just never quite got finished the way that he really wanted it to sound. And so it kind of, when I started putting this thing together and I started collecting all these songs, I go, Jim, you got a song? And he goes, yeah, I got this great song. I never really liked the way it was. I never thought it was quite finished. So we were able to go in and really put some nice gloss on it.
Is that the single that's out now? Welcome
to My World. Yeah.
I got to tell you, listening to that it really took me back. It was really cool and a little bit jaw dropping to know that it's a new track, but it sounds like The Call, obviously. And to hear Michael's voice singing something new was pretty cool.
We've got 11 of them on there.
Well, just to fill in a little bit of detail about that song, I sort of forgot about it. Like I had actually used part of the song in another thing that I was working on for something else that was like for a movie or something, and that I ended up not using that either. But I remembered that riff, but otherwise I'd kind of forgot that we ever recorded it with The Call. And when we got the Into the Woods album returned to us by Elektra, it was included. And that's when I heard it and went, oh, wow, we did record it.
Yeah, that was the almost made it on, but didn't.
And that's when I remembered that when we recorded it, I always felt like it wasn't done. Like it just wasn't, somehow the arrangement wasn't, it was kind of too much the same thing, everybody kind of playing the same line over and over. And so that just having a chance to go back in and add the stuff that I always felt was missing. It just really, it was like it was like something you never thought you'd get to do, and you suddenly get a chance and you do it. And the guitars that the guys did, Ralph and Tom, and we were able to put some organ and piano on it so it wasn't so synthy. And it just really came together. And one of the lucky things for us was that Michael's voice was really loud.
Yeah.
So there was no worry about like burying the vocal with new stuff being added. We added the stuff, sounded great. Michael's voice stayed right on top, and it really worked out. We were really lucky. One other thing I wanted to circle back to what Tom was saying earlier about those first tracks, the recordings they did that got the album deal. Tom, I never had this story straight in my mind. When I joined the band, you guys talked about how you had gotten your album deal by doing songs that the record company said, great, we'll give you a deal. And then when you made the album, you didn't use those songs. Like, because Michael didn't really want to he wanted to do something else once they got the deal. And the record company was kind of shocked when they got the record and it wasn't the songs they thought it was going to be. Is that a true story?
Well, it is a true story because at that time it was the band changed from sort of a airtight was Dale Ackerman was a wonderful keyboard player, but everything was kind of a I don't really know how to explain it. It's become more Steely Dan-ish. And when I joined the band and Dale left, I was just a rock and roll guitar player. And I think that really inspired Michael. That's kind of where his home is in rock and roll. And he just kept writing. And I think it was those songs just got lost because there was like 6 months or something before we started actually working on an album, maybe 9 months. And by the time we got there, you know, he carried around a little notebook and he was always doing stuff. And we were
like writing stuff.
He was always writing stuff and we were always jamming all the time. And so it became really easy for him to write a bunch of new songs. But we also did the same thing, Jim, in the 90s. And
right, that's a similar story.
We had done the Red Moon album. Jimmy left to get married. And so my guitar tech, who Jim had mentioned before, Ralph Patlin, who plays on this record, we decided to mess around. And I've always been bugging Michael. I've always wanted bigger guitars on all of our records. He let me kind of do it on Let the Day Begin. We kind of expanded the sound of the guitars. And when we got to the 90s, this was an opportunity to do it again because we didn't have the keyboards there. So we brought Ralph in and we were experimenting with this 2 guitars, bass and drums sound. And so once again, Michael got really inspired. We did about 6 or 7 songs. And there was another break of about 9 months before we went in and started The Verge of a Nervous Breakthrough album. And he wrote a whole bunch more. And he was always right in that moment of time where he was writing. So whatever he wrote 6 months ago, if it wasn't recorded, we were off to the next mood that he was in. And so it was kind of the same similar thing. It's just because he was he was just writing all the time.
And those are the other songs that are on the Lost Tapes.
Those are the other songs that are on the Lost Tapes.
Okay. Yeah. Which I had not heard.
Yeah. He had not heard. What started the thing was we got initiated into the Oklahoma Rock and Roll Hall of Fame about 3 or 4 years ago. And we tried to put something together. We couldn't get Jim. He was busy at the time. So I called up Ralph. When I got together with Ralph, I said, you know, I heard one of these songs that we did back in the 90s was really good. What would you think about developing it? And he said, sure. And so I went back and found more songs, and that's kind of how it did. I phoned up Jim and a Scotty, and I said, you guys got any songs? What do you think about making a record?
Nice.
It fell together like that.
1, 2, 1, 2. In our beds that night, there were strangers in the streets that night. The preacher cried out, hell's been raised. The preacher cried out, hell's been raised. Another hot Oklahoma night. Another hot Oklahoma night. The kind of night where you just sit still. The kind of night where you just don't move. We were shaking in our beds that night. We were shaking in our boots that night. Tornado hit and the roof gave away. Tornado hit and all we could do was pray. How was I to know what I was to think? How was I to know what I was to feel? How am I to face what I can't describe? How am I to face what I cannot hide?
If we approach your career in a linear fashion, at least for the time being, your first 2 records are nowhere to be found.
There's this thing with eminent domain. where artists are supposed to get back their records after 35. You're aware of that, right?
I am.
You're shaking your head.
Yep.
And so those first 3 records were on Polygram Mercury, and they found some loophole and basically said, we ain't going to get back to you. And we weren't really aware of all this happening until the Warner Brothers albums came up to their 35-year thing. That was Into the Woods and Reconcile.
Right.
They sent them right back to us. They sent us a letter and said, here's your records.
Wow.
You know, we'd like to still be involved with you if you want. I mean, it was really nice. So we didn't have any problem with them. But the other records, we just don't have any control of. And this loophole thing that happened, they have this thing called the Universal Music Group now.
No, I know.
They bought up all those struggling labels that were kind of hanging out in the 90s.
Oh.
And so they're not playing fair right now. And anytime you can mention that, because there has to be something done about this. If we get albums back, we will probably start making them again, or at least.
Well, it was interesting because their argument from Universal was that as far as they were concerned, the contracts all had a clause in them that said that they were done as a work for hire. And in all the music, like intellectual copyright stuff, work for hire is if you sign something that says you're doing a work for hire, you're giving away all of your rights to it. So they're claiming that all the contracts that they did with bands for albums all said work for hire somewhere in the contract. And they said, therefore, we don't have to give anything back because the band agreed to, give up the rights to it. So that's been kind of the big fight, is everybody's trying to get them to prove that they've got contracts that say work for hire in them. In the meantime, they're just sitting on it and saying they do, and they're just not, cooperating. So,
that's uncool.
It's frustrating.
Yeah, I would imagine.
I'm curious to pull on threads of what was influencing you, because I'm trying to make the pitch to my 12-year-old daughter, and name dropping your contemporaries isn't helping my case. Nor is describing your music. I describe Everywhere I Go as what it sounded like to be cool in 1986.
Why not, Jim? You got a comment on that?
No. I mean, I don't. It's funny that you say that, because we always felt like we were like the least cool band
really
out there. Yeah, because we I think a part of the reason why I think we always felt like we weren't really kind of making the big time was because we just weren't cool. We were, we didn't dress cool, and we just,
I would have used the word we were different, not cool. Now remember, I was the man in black.
Yeah.
but
in those days, it was the man in purple.
Yeah, we were oddballs.
Yeah. Everybody was wearing, what Michael Bean called the first day he saw Simple Minds come out on stage. On the tour, he called it Funky Shakespeare.
That works.
Because they had like on slippers and stuff, and like big floaty white puffy shirts, and and everybody moved around like this.
Yeah.
Tights.
Tights. And
Funny
stuff.
about that is because they, we kind of made fun of them, and they kind of took it. They didn't get mad at us for it because. And so every night, Michael used to come out during their encore and sing a song with them, a background song. And one of the ones that he actually sang on their album doing. And so every night they would hang a little thing with tights and little ballet shoes in a room for him to wear. Never wore it.
I was going to say, presumably he never wore it. Yeah.
Shakespeare. But yeah, I think that was kind of I mean, we sort of realized, in fact, they made fun of us because we dressed like a bunch of hicks. and then actually Bono, of all people, when we worked with Bono, he actually kind of sat us down and like scolded us for not having a brand image. And it's Bono, so he's like the master of the brand.
Yeah,
right.
I mean, it was interesting to hear that from the master of the brand and to realize, oh yeah, we really don't, like he said, if you guys want to dress like that you don't care about the current fashions, he said, then you all have to do it. And you have to go, not just that you don't care, but you have to go as far the other direction as you can go. If you want to look scruffy, he said, then you got to all grow scraggly beards and have dirty hair and frumpy, old hat and, probably kind of like how the band looked when they first came out,
Hobo chic.
He was saying, he was like, you guys you gotta go all the way. You got to be all in with your brand, your look. If it's anti-fashion, it's got to be nasty, like dirty, filthy, greaser, just blah. And I thought, okay, that's interesting, because the fact that we sort of said, well, we don't really think about our fashion and stuff and how we look. Or that's not what we do. We do music, and we're not contrived in that way. But then somebody pointed out, but you guys, you do all this stuff to look, you dye your hair, or you put the black smudge spot with the charcoal cork from the wine bottle, rub the black stuff on the top of your head so you can't see that you're balding. and I think it was Bono who said that. He goes, you're trying just as hard to look like you don't care about your fashion as anybody is who cares about their fashion. He said, so you got to, crap or get off the pot. You either got to do it 100%, one way or the other, but you can't do what you're doing, which is nothing.
Well, we never.
And I thought, wow, was kind of interesting to hear. And it was at the very end of our career. So it was too late.
The first time we went to England, they referred to us as having park keeper outfits on.
Wow.
See, there you go. Not Funky Shakespeare, park keeper.
But you were close enough to Bono that he sang on your record. I mean, he's on What's Happened to You.
Yeah.
Used to hang your head down, you wouldn't look in my eyes. Did you see some great vision? Did you finally break through? Did you shake the foundations? What's happened to you? La 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 la. What's happened to you? You used to look so tired. Now there's a spring in your step, and your words are on fire. Did you hear some great secret? Did the words ring a truth? Did you rise from the ashes? What's happened to you? Where the four winds meet.
Love to hear about that.
Well, actually, that was Tom. Do you mind if I run with this for a second?
Go.
That was an interesting situation because we were doing that album. We were doing Red Moon with T-Bone Burnett, and I don't remember if T-Bone connected us. I think T-Bone had something to do with us connecting with Bono. And as it turned out, he was looking for a band to record a demo of a song that he wrote called Private Dancer, that he wrote for Willie Nelson, because he thought Willie Nelson needed help paying his tax bill. And so he wanted to contribute to Willie's cause. And so he wrote what he assumed would be a big hit because he wrote it, which was probably true. But he needed a band to record it. And T-Bone, I think, said, well, I'm in the studio with The Call. And if you want to come to LA, we'll take a afternoon, few hours, and you can teach the guys the song. And because he thought we were kind of a country band, because Scott and Michael were from Oklahoma, and they are like they know their country really well. And I grew up with country music big time. My dad, that was all we listened to.
Wait a minute, so, T-Bone thought you were country, or Bono thought you were country?
No, Bono.
Okay, cool.
Well, T-Bone figured Bono would think we were kind of country.
Okay.
So I think he probably said, well, I have this band that's kind of country, like they can do country. And he said, and Bono may have heard about us probably at that point. He had, I'm sure he had. So he said, yeah, that sounds good. So I think what Michael said when we got we're told that this was what we might do, I think Michael probably said, yeah, we'll do that if Bono will sing on one of our songs. And Bono said, okay, but only if it's background vocal, and it can't be mixed way high in the mix, where it's obviously me. He said, I don't mind being in the background group, but I don't want to be featured. And we said, oh, that's fine.
Yeah.
We kind of goosed it up a little bit, but
sure.
A little.
Yeah.
But so that's how it came off. It was a swap where, okay, so here's the best part of that whole thing. So Scott, who is so oaky, this is the most oaky move you could make. And this is saying a good thing about Okies. Scott was so straightforward in that oaky way with people that, because he could never, I guess it's suffer fools gladly or whatever. It's like, the other thing is like somebody says, I want to hear your side of the story, and I don't want to hear 1 ounce of bullshit. Well, that's kind of the oaky way. So at one point in this session with Bono, he's in the control room, and we're out there with our instruments trying to play the song. And he's kind of doing this thing where he's wringing his hands. He's going, yeah, right. It's it's good, but it needs like, I don't know, just, I don't really know country, but, you guys are the experts, but I just feel like it needs like a little bit of, I don't know, And then finally Scott cuts him off and goes, hey, Bono, cut the bullshit. We're not in charge. You're the rock star. You're in charge. Just tell us what you want.
Wow. All right. Good for you.
And it was great because somehow an Okie like Scott can say that to somebody and there's nothing offensive about it. It's just the truth. And so Bono totally changed after that because he was being all kind of, not pretentious, but it was like he thought he had to act a certain way for us to, to cooperate or to be comfortable or something. So when Scott said that, he realized, oh shit, I need to just be one of the guys here. Yeah. And then he just became one of the guys and it was great. And he said, yeah, what I want is I want you guys to just play it a little bit more, in that bluesy kind of old school country way, and we were like, oh yeah, okay, great. Because otherwise we didn't really know. Sorry. But yeah, so just Scott saying that was, I thought it was hysterical when he said, cut the bullshit. You're the rock star. Tell us what you want.
That's great. Did Willie end up cutting it? Where is that song today?
I don't think so. I don't think anything ever happened with it.
Okay.
Never heard it again.
Private dancer.
Interesting.
We got to get the shovels out, Keith. I bet somewhere it exists.
Oh yeah.
God, we got to find the demo. We cut the demo. I mean, it was done.
I can't get them to stay focused. They keep escalating the conversation into evil curses and opening leather shops in Arizona.
A leather shop in Arizona?
Yeah.
Well, they'd be out of business in a week's time.
Interesting you mentioned Bono. That song in particular had a real Van Morrison vibe to it. I don't know if that was a Bono influence or if it was the way it was written, but I'm like, whoa, this is quite a departure. It was lovely, you know. Was that intentional?
Have you heard the songs, all the songs on the Lost Tapes?
No, I don't have access to it.
There's a song on the Lost Tapes called Beautiful Lie that is almost the same song.
Oh.
And Michael did it. I'm sure he wrote it, you know, around the same time and just had written it, you know, before, and then nothing ever happened with it. And I think he always thought it was a real strong song, which it was. And so he reworked it for the Red Moon album.
Okay, cool.
And it's totally different. Like the lyrics are completely different, but it's the same chords. And the funny thing is when I heard Beautiful Live, and he did it with Garth Hudson's playing organ. And Tom, do you know who's playing piano on that?
I think it is.
And is Spurlock on it?
I think Tommy Spurlock plays guitar, and it's Scotty's keyboard friend from Oklahoma. I can't remember his name right now, but yeah, I believe he is playing piano on that.
So it was a great band, but when I heard Beautiful Lie, and you know, I was supposed to either add stuff or not to these songs for the Lost Tape stuff, because they were all songs that I had never heard before, except for the one that we did with Into the Woods, but Welcome to My World. But so when I heard Beautiful Lie, right away I recognized that it was kind of more or less the same song, but it sounded totally like Van to me, which I had never really thought about with What's Happened to You. But so it's interesting that you heard that, Keith. And so then I heard that with that version, and I said, hey, let me put the tenor sax little section on it that Van would do.
Yes.
And so then we added the sax, and it was like, okay, yeah, that really sounds like Van. but it's cool, man. I mean, it's like, and plus I got to play with Garth Hudson again, which was another miracle.
Really cool. Because Jimmy doesn't play it all the time. I said, you know, why don't you play your sax? And he didn't hesitate for a second.
It was a beautiful lie, it was a beautiful dream, just a trick of the light, it was not what it seemed. It was life as a tall tale, in the end is goodbye. Time put an end to a beautiful lie. Could have swore I saw color, I thought I heard song, I thought I knew true love, but I guess I was wrong. The tender voice vanished, no light in her eyes. You'd left with the heartache from a beautiful lie. It was a beautiful lie, it was a beautiful dream, just a trick of the light, it was not what it seemed. It was life as a tall tale, in the end is goodbye. Time put an end to a beautiful lie.
When I first saw the video for When the Walls Came Down, I was just a kid. I remember seeing Garth in that video, and I'm like, who the fuck is that guy? Because he looked so incongruous to you guys, you know? I'm like, and then of course I dug around, found out it was Garth Hudson from the band, and that set me down a different spiral. This predates the internet where you actually had to research things. But to that end, Jeff and I both want to talk about When the Walls Came Down, because I want to tell you right now that song in particular as a kid helped frame my political belief as well as my attitude towards corporate culture. For that last line really hit home. It really resonated with me.
When they blew the horns the walls came down. They'd all been won, but the walls came down. I don't think there are any Russians. There ain't no Yanks. Just corporate criminals. Playing with pigs.
And to be clear, those lyrics are, I don't think there are any Russians, and there ain't no Yanks, just corporate criminals playing with tanks. And it never stops being true. Once again, here's Tom.
That was off that Modern Romance album.
Yep.
There was a lot of that kind of theme going on. It was the Reagan years. And, you know, that song, incidentally, we did it in black and white. And at the time, that was like the end of the first year of MTV. And for the first year of MTV, they had this whole thing where they didn't want to have any black and white videos on because they were trying to keep all the stuff, the old stuff from the 50s and stuff off their new channel. So they kind of had a thing, well, we don't want to accept any black and white videos. You got to be flashy and colorful, like, you know, the 80s, like New Wave.
The Man in Purple.
And so they put it into rotation, and there it was. We were the first kind of black and white video, just in case if that ever comes up in a trivia question. But we got Garth to do it, and it was really funny because, you know, it's Garth Hudson. He's old school, and he kind of said, you know, I don't want to. Really? You want me to be on it? We said, sure, Garth, you'll have fun. You know, come down the day with us into the sewers, and we'll kind of tape this. But you know, between every take, he was just as funny, you know.
Oh,
and a wonderful guy.
Awesome.
There was a story that you guys told me when Garth was recording Oregon, and he was out in the studio room in the dark because he just liked being in the dark for some reason. And Hugh Padgham was the producer.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so do you remember this story, Tom, where Hugh Padgham asked him to just hold the high note through the whole section of that last part of the solo or something?
Don't remember a particular story. If you know it, go with it.
Well, so the story that Michael told me is that kind of like Bono was doing to us, but so Hugh Padgham, you know, Garth finishes this take. He's probably doing his whole thing. And then it finishes the take, and Hugh Padgham gets on the little talkback thing, presses the button, and says, Garth, listen, that's great. It's great. What you're doing is great. But I was thinking if you could maybe just go up and just gliss up to that high note and just hold it. Right through the whole end, through that whole section, just that high note. Could you do that? And so Michael, when he told me the story, he said, "Okay, well, we were all waiting to hear what Garth would say because there was this pause, there was this silence, and then out of the darkness comes Garth's voice, and he goes, "Well, yeah, we could do that. That'd be a drag." And Michael said they just cracked up as soon as that'd be a drag.
Awesome.
Oh man,
that's incredible. I am struck by the comment from Peter Gabriel calling your band the future of American rock, and then of course took you out on tour with him. What, if anything, does that say, you know, in the moment, and did it inspire, influence?
We always thought it was a curse. We said, God, we got to live up to that.
Oh, no.
But Peter, you know, it was all about Peter getting a hold of us. Peter got a hold of us, and we were all like, wow, really? You know, I mean, myself, I had to go back and start listening to stuff. I didn't know that much about him. I knew about Genesis and stuff, but I wasn't really all familiar with a lot of it.
Yeah.
But he just really liked us, and he liked us so much that he did this wonderful thing for us. Besides just being friendly, his door was always open. We rode around the trains all over Europe together. That's how we toured. And he was just, wide open, sitting, talking. Wasn't a rock star at all. It was just really a warm, sweet guy. And one of the things he did when we first joined the tour is the roadies came up to us and said, well, listen, Peter is so huge. And this was especially in the European leg of this thing. He goes, Peter's so huge that this whole arena is going to be, rabid Peter fans. And lots of times they will kind of not boo the opening band, but just basically either be uninterested or yell Peter's name, that kind of thing. And so unbeknownst to us, that this was kind of behind the scenes, the first gig we played, he came out on stage with this was the Shock the Monkey tour, so he had kind of half monkey makeup on, and he walked out on stage, and of course everybody went up to their feet, and he basically kind of introduced us, said, "This is one of my favorite bands from America. Please enjoy them." And so he would leave the stage, and everybody would be up on their feet, like screaming and applauding already, and that's how we would start our sets. Knowing that was going to really set us up for having a great time. And he did that every night on the tour. And not only did he do that, but he did it in the local language, either in French or Italian, German.
Wow.
And that's the kind of guy he was. So when it came to this thing of the lost tapes and we're trying to get the Kickstarter going, I just wrote him a letter. Jimmy wrote him a letter too, and just said, "Hey Pete, this is me from the Call. Could you help us out with the Kickstarter?" That's all I said, and boom, he just went right for it and put it on his page, which really boosted up the end of the whole Kickstarter thing. But he's a wonderful guy.
Tom, one addendum to that is that I mentioned it to him when we were on tour that in Europe doing that thing, and I said something to him about. I said, "You know what?" I said, "It's really." It's not something that most people would do. Like, we really appreciate that you come out at the beginning of the show and introduce us to the crowd and everything. And I said, it makes such a huge difference. And he said, "Yeah, well," he said, "I'm not really doing it for you guys." And he kind of laughed. He goes, "To be perfectly honest," he said, "I noticed that if I went out on stage after the opening act had gotten the crowd kind of, in a funny mood, like kind of aggressive or, kind of impatient or whatever," he said, "it would take a certain amount of time for my set to get them calmed down and, get the mood back into a positive, good flowing feeling." He said, "So I really do that so that when I go out there, it's already a good feeling. The room is already filled with a good vibe." He said, "So I'm really doing it for myself."
Either way, it worked.
Yeah, it was sweet.
I have to say it's something that I think he still does, because I saw him at Radio City Music Hall maybe 10 years ago, and he did the very same thing. I forget who the opening act was, but he came out and said, "This is a band, or this is an artist I really like. I hope you like her." So
yeah.
It was wonderful. He saw the whole concert as the whole concert. Don't just throw somebody out there, because we did early on in our career, we did a gig in Riverside, California. Opened up for Joan Jett, right when she had that huge song out, "I Love Rock and Roll."
Yeah.
And it was Riverside. There were probably 10,000 young teenage boys there. And they screamed Joan Jett louder than we were playing.
Wow.
and it was like one of those times where you thought you were in a movie, or was this, is this Saturday Night Live? What is this, what is really happening? And for me, I just laughed it off. Michael, of course, lost his mind. He thought he was crushed. But when we came off, I just thought it was kind of funny, the whole thing, and it was really cool, because Joan Jett eventually kind of invited us over to her trailer, and said, I really apologize, you guys. I asked you to come and open for us and blah, blah, blah. And she was really sweet about it, but it was really funny to just see these angry boys out there. Joan Jett, Joan Jett. And Jimmy, you can imagine how that affected Michael Biehn,
Yeah.
I've seen Michael Biehn just take his guitar off and toss it and walk out the front door of a club while we were still playing. Maybe I should tell that story.
No, we've heard worse. Trust me.
He was moody.
You are Mr. Dollar, aren't you?
Yes, ma'am.
Sit down.
Thank you.
Harold, my dear, ring for Higgins and have him see if the morning mail has come.
I was about to go out and look for it myself, Tyler.
I said let Higgins do it.
Let's talk a little bit about Let the Day Begin, which to me is just a wonderful song because it so encompasses every walk of life. In fact, so much so, it was used for the Al Gore 2000 presidential campaign. That was his theme song. Do you believe, or do you guys think that music has a role in raising awareness and inspiring change?
I would hope so.
Yeah,
I would really hope so. I mean, that's pretty much why I think if you're serious about it, you get into music, because it's an amplifier for thought.
Jim
awake?
Well, yeah, especially when you consider that, coming out of the 60s and then the 70s, we were all still, I'm younger than the other guys in the band by almost 10 years. And so I kind of felt like the kid in the band, but, my introduction to live rock and roll performing and stuff was pretty much punk rock. I was in San Francisco and was playing in punk rock bands. And I ended up going to New York and played in punk bands in New York. And the whole, like Tom's saying, it was like that was kind of part of the reason to get into music at that time was to get up and, yell about stuff that you thought was screwed up. And then fast forward all the way to 2 days ago, I went to a concert here in town, and Sisters, the local newspaper guy, we have a little tiny newspaper, and he's a real history nut, and he's a singer-songwriter, and a guy that one of his best friends is another singer-songwriter here. Jim Cornelius is the Nugget guy, and his friend Mike Biggers I played with a lot here. He's a singer-songwriter, and they did a whole show they originally did it for the library and band, and it was the history of protest and revolution and struggle music. And they didn't want to do the obvious, sort of, Pete Seeger and Joan Baez and all that stuff. So they were looking for just different types of stuff. And they of course were doing songs that were spiritual gospel songs that the Black community was, using to communicate with each other when they couldn't, get together and talk about anything. So really interesting stuff. They even did a version of Yankee Doodle Dandy, which I didn't ever know the story of. Was the British soldiers were making fun of the American soldiers, Yankees, and a doodle was a German word for an imbecile, and so they called him, Yankee Imbecile Dandy, and macaroni was an Italian-sounding word that meant high class, and so when it says he stuck a feather in his cap and called it macaroni, was just another slag against the Americans. Like, they think if they stick a feather in their hat, they're suddenly high class. Like, that's how stupid they are. So, like, they had all this information about these songs like that, like, I had no idea. And it was just a fascinating little concert. But they did a John Fogerty song. They did Fortunate Son. They did Lawyers, Guns, and Money by Warren Zevon. And Jim Cornelius had interviewed me a few weeks earlier about our Kickstarter thing. He actually did an article in our local paper about it because he thought it was really cool. He thought the band, and he wasn't that familiar with us, but he kind of remembered us. but so then he started listening to our stuff a lot after the interview, and he said they had a whole day there at the office where they just listened to the call stuff. And I felt really proud that he and Mike had, this was something that was really kind of, dear to their hearts, was this whole idea that music has this powerful, ability to change people and to change, minds and to create movements and all that stuff. And that I knew that after listening to our stuff, that he would be, considering the Call as one of the better bands that ever came along that used their platform to express those kind of ideas. And I was just really I just felt really good. Like at the end of their show, I thought, this is great. Like, I know Jim's thinking that, I was in a band that he had a ton of respect for. And so all these years later, it was right there.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I love that song is strong enough to have multiple narratives and multiple stories associated with it. I think that song is responsible for a really interesting connective tissue to another generation of bands that I do think there are a subset of alternative rock and indie rock bands that owe a great deal to the Call. And look, I think Michael's son's band's cover of Let the Day Begin is a perfect example of those through lines. And to have, not only after Michael passed, to honor him the way that you did, but I gotta say the quality of that live record that you did with him it's astonishing.
I have to figure out how this goes with your version now.
So I will forever love Let the Day Begin for both of those reasons and both of those moments.
Yeah. And we were all excited because we all thought Al Gore was going to win.
Well, he did win.
We
Let's not kid each other.
Well, right. Yeah. Well, we were all excited because he won. And then, so we were all thinking, well, we're going to go to the inauguration.
Yeah.
We're going to play the song at the party. Then they stole it from us.
Man.
That was going to be, of course, we're looking at it as kind of, hey, this could kickstart us into the 2000s.
Yeah.
And then that happened.
Yeah.
And in fact, that was kind of a thing where Michael got so bummed out at that whole thing that he actually kind of put the band on hiatus and started working with his son.
Really? Just over that?
Well, that was part of it.
That was part of it. Okay.
That was part. He wanted to be with his son. Was starting to make records, and he wanted to be there, and help him out, which he did for all the way up until he passed.
Throughout your career, you guys have collaborated with so many different people: Robbie Robertson, Garth Hudson, Jim Kerr from Simple Minds, Peter Gabriel, and of course Bono, as we mentioned. We mentioned all these guys. I have a two-part question. One, were Robbie and Garth ever in the studio together as they contributed? No. And then sub-question.
Definitely not.
Is there a particular collaboration that stands out that you really sort of resonates with you aside from the Bono story? Is there something that was like, oh, that was amazing?
We were doing Seen Beyond Dreams album. And I think Jim was there. But all of a sudden we got contacted by this Cajun guy, Joel Saunier. And he was a Cajun guy to the max, played the squeeze box and everything, and he wrote wonderful songs, and he said he wanted to use us as his backing band for a song. And he says, I just want you to here's the song, I want you to kind of play what you do, and I'm going to put this Cajun flavor in there. And we did, I think it was 2 days in the stew with him. And it was really quite a fun experience. His wife brought fried chicken every night. And it was just so different, because I love that music, but I never thought that we were anything close to, being that kind of vibe. But that's another song that came out somewhere. I don't know where it is.
I think we did a version of a song called Allons à Lafayette.
Yes.
Which is a famous Cajun song. And I think Garth brought him in.
Really? He could have.
Yeah, because remember Garth had his keyboards there in the studio at El Dorado, and because when I came down that's where I interviewed with the band to join the band. Michael, at like 2 a.m, I came down after I had done a show at the Whiskey with this band I was with, this band Sparks that I was with.
Wait, Sparks?
If you know about Sparks, then you guys have really got something going on.
Yeah.
Ron and Russell Mail. So I had done a show with them at the Whiskey and was having an after party at my hotel room at the Tropicana in Hollywood. And I get this call to ask, saying, is there any chance that, because I had submitted to their management company, to Cavallo, Ruffalo, and Farnoli. Speaking of the Man in Purple, they were his managers, and they were the calls managers as well at the time. And I had submitted to them because I had heard that they were looking for a keyboard player. So the band got my information somehow that night, and they called me. I don't know how they found me. They called the hotel, and they said, is there any chance you could come down, tonight? And I said, yeah, I'm up and I've got a room full of people. But so I went down to the studio and met the band. And I went, at one point, Michael took me out into the tracking room, and Garth's keyboards were set up there. And Michael had me play the grand piano, and he played Garth's CS80, his big synthesizer. And we just did this jam. Michael just started playing this kind of bluesy jam thing and said, just play whatever comes to your mind, just jam. And so I did. And I guess I jammed well enough that he decided, yeah, this guy, he'll do. Like, he seems good enough, And the band was kind of desperate for somebody because they had another keyboard player lined up to go on this tour, opening for Peter Gabriel in Europe. And the guy was starting to kind of jerk him around, and he jerked him around so much that they finally said, you know what, forget it. We're going to use this other guy, Jim Goodwin, that we met. And that's how I got the gig. But I remember being back in the studio when we did Alon's à Lafayette with Joël Saunier. And the other weird thing that was going on then was Garth had got a throat mic from an old like World War II or World War I pilot thing where they have this mic that would go on their throat so they could talk and it would transmit, and I don't know why it wasn't up here anywhere. But it went on their throat, like strapped on. And Garth had one, and he was doing like what he did with the goose sounds. He was recording into his sampler his voice through this throat mic and was trying to make it work like in the song. It was just more of Garth's like amazingly weird, cool stuff. But it was all part of that same session where Joel was there and we were doing that song.
That makes sense that he would have invited him.
Yeah, I'm sure it was his connection. He's, come on down with I got this band. They're going to love you. Just come on down. Yeah, it was really, really eclectic.
That just further speaks to the eclecticness of Garth Hudson, right?
Yeah, it's
weird.
Well, plus I get to say that I replaced Garth in the call.
That is a pretty big statement.
Because he was kind of in the band before I joined. And so then I said, I replaced Garth Hudson. Yeah.
No big deal.
What are you going to do? Yeah, no big deal.
He didn't really want to go traipse around Europe.
Can't blame him.
We kind of started here, and I want to bring us all the way back to current. Did the interest in the Kickstarter really start with just some found tapes, Tom? These were like tapes that you discovered in your closet. Why 2024 for this moment?
What started it, I think, was that we had this little collective of the three of us old band members and an old manager of ours and another friend. And when these albums came back to us, we said, well, what should we do with these things? These are ours now. And that kind of got us all into let's remaster these and then put them out. And so the fact that we had this little unit going and the fact that I had gotten together again with my old bandmates, because we hadn't really seen each other for years, kind of started this thing. It started me being curious about, making another record. Even though I knew Michael wasn't there, I just knew that there were songs around, and Scott was always telling me, what we ought to do is just get some other singer and go in and make another album, write some new songs or something, because we had the time and we just didn't want the whole legacy of the call just to kind of end where it ended. So it was just kind of on a lark, and it was really finding these songs and realizing how good they were.
Well, Tom, also part of because we got those albums back and we were talking about, reissuing them remastered or whatever. I remember Dan Russell, our former manager who was involved with this, he said, if you guys have any outtakes or B-sides or, songs that never got released that we could add to the release as like, bonus tracks. So it's like the old album remastered with some bonus tracks.
Right.
And so that's where we kind of started looking. I remember going back and trying to find my old tapes and to see if I could find anything, maybe that we had that was a song that never came out. And I'm sure that's what got you going, Tom, was looking through your boxes of tapes.
Yeah, that was it when they started talking about that, like, let's put some bonus tracks on there. And but it was really hearing the quality of the songs, that they were really good. And it was just really fun giving them up to Jimmy so he could hear these things, because this was this period when he wasn't in the band. And, and from another perspective, we never made that much money in the call. And,
I would imagine. Yeah.
And so we
never made any.
We were hoping that maybe we could, make a little cash, put out another record that people will like.
I want to piggyback a little bit off Jeff's question and ask, would it be possible? I mean, I know it's possible because so many artists have done it. Prince, Taylor Swift, the purple one, as it were, and Taylor Swift
The Man in Purple.
The Man in Purple, rather. Would it be possible for you guys to go in as a three-piece with Michael's son and record those first two records? Would that hold any appeal to anybody outside of me?
And me.
Well, ideas like that are always kind of popping around. Right now, Robert is doing his own thing, and he's just, pretty much tied up with what he's doing. We've thought of all sorts of different things. We played with a friend of Jim's down in Louisiana named Ray. What's his last name?
Ganeshow.
And he's, it was such a fun gig, and he sang and played bass. And, Scott has always talked to me about, he would be really fun in a perfect world would be to find another singer, because we love playing with each other and actually moving the call forward into something else. Not going away from it, because we're all the same players. We play the same way.
Right.
But not try to imitate Michael, but go in a really strong direction. And Ray, who plays off and on with the Subdudes out of Louisiana, fabulous musician. And really, when we played together, it just kind of opened both Scotty and I up to, wow, there are a lot of possibilities. If this Lost Tapes makes us a little money, we might be able to start doing something. Right now, we all have day jobs and wives, and we live at home again.
Wait. That might mean something entirely different for our listeners.
As opposed to living on the road.
Oh, okay. All right.
Well,
not with mom and dad.
Okay, okay. This is a point of clarity.
My fantasy is that we go on a tour with Todd Rundgren as our lead singer.
There you go.
Because he's a big fan.
That would be incredible.
I found out what a huge fan he was when somebody told me, if you go on YouTube and do The Walls Came Down, you'll find 10 versions of it by Todd and his different bands.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, he was doing it in his live show for quite a while.
Yeah, he did it with 3 guitars, which was pretty cool.
Yeah. Says the guitar player.
Yeah.
Not that cool.
I do want to call out the slide guitar on Let the Day Begin. I was driving back from running errands, and I was listening to that song, and the slide guitar stuck out as well as some of the lyrics, and I'm not ashamed to say I got a little weepy.
Really?
It was very powerful for some reason. There was a line about the Vietnam vets, pointless war and the wall, and I'm like, good Lord, that's so. It's a very. I love that song to no end. I think.
Well, so do I. I was just watching it the other day because there's a. I'd never really played slide before, and I just kind of it wasn't
just
really
whipped it out.
It wasn't really something I had just gotten into. I really seriously. And I'm sure people say this all the time, but I had never really played it before. And we did the song Let the Day Begin, and I was supposed to play a solo on it. And I remember fiddling around with some stuff and really couldn't come up with anything. And everybody broke for dinner. And the rest of the band went out, and I stayed. And at one point, this really kind of sounds like cliche, but I picked up the Jack Daniels bottle because I was frustrated with what I was doing and started going, and engineer said, you ever think of playing a slide? No, I don't really know how to play it. He goes, well, why don't you just mess around with it? And so I said, okay, well, all right, I got to make it really easy for myself because I don't really know where these patterns are. So I'll just turn my guitar, tone it to an open A string, a major A. I took the low E string off, so there were just 5 strings on it. So I could do anything I wanted, and if I just released it, it was an A chord. And I kind of, in one night, laid all that down, and then kind of as a lark, really. And then came in the next day, and Michael had edited some of it, and he goes, "Man, this is fantastic. Here's the solo." And so I'm sitting backstage we went on the Arsenio Hall show about 2 months after that. And I was in the back of my mind, I was always thinking, gee, I hope Let the Day Begin isn't a really big hit, because I'm going to have to play this. I'm going to have to learn how to play it. I remember standing backstage, in the curtain and going, this is one of these kind of moments. Here I am. I'm going to go out in front of millions of people and play the slide. But I think it's really sweet that you said you really liked that. It really meant something to you, because I played just kind of emotionally. Really didn't know what I was playing, but
Tom, to be perfectly candid with you, I'm not even a musician. Jeff's the guitar player. I'm not even a musician, and I was impacted. So
it's a wonderful moment that happened by surprise. Surprised me too.
I never knew any of that.
Yeah, and then I had to kind of learn how to play slide for real, and I still don't play it all the time, but I play it occasionally. But that song gets. It's funny because my niece just got married recently, and she wanted me, or it was last year, she wanted me to come up and play "Let the Day Begin" with her wedding band that they had, and as soon as they started into that song, everybody in the place just jumped up, started dancing. They loved it. It was just kind of a treat when that kind of thing happens as a musician.
That's something that we do here, Jeff and I. We're able to pull the stories out that nobody knows, even people in the band.
I didn't even know that story at all. I thought you were a whiz on slide from day one.
Yeah. Fake it till you make it, right?
Yes. Just that's what.
Well, I got to tell you guys, having played with a lot of musicians, especially since then, but back when we were jamming, there were nights when we played live, and Tom was on one side of the stage and I was on the opposite side, but we'd get into some of the songs. There were a lot of them, but like the Woods was one of them, and where his guitar would just, I would just kind of get mesmerized by his guitar. There's a couple times where I sort of forgot to play because I was just listening to him going, holy crap, this is fantastic. Some of the jams were just, they were epic. I mean, they were just like I'm telling Tom, I'm just giving you a compliment, because
thank you, brother. I appreciate
it. The guitar there were so many nights when it was just unbelievable.
No, I hadn't
live.
We got together and I started listening to all the songs to do the thing with for the Michael's Memorial with Robert. I hadn't listened to those songs in a long time, so I started listening to them all. And something that naturally happened between me and Jim was we had this wonderful thing where we would talk to each other, basically, kind of. He'd play a riff, I'd play a riff, and we didn't sit down and go, this is how we're going to do it. It's just kind of a natural thing that we flowed into. It was kind of talking with our instruments. And I found that in a lot of the songs that I never, at the time, didn't think about, which is always wonderful about music. If you don't listen to something for 10 years, then put it on, and it's like, wow, because you're listening to all sorts of different parts that maybe you hadn't listened to 10 years ago, and you hear things. And one of the things is this kind of talking thing that we did between us, and it just happened naturally. It's wonderful. And Jim and I, as long as we're complimenting each other so much right now, I don't think we even really ever talked about it. I don't think I ever mentioned to him, but it was just something I heard in there, and it was a natural thing. And that's why, I think the Call Band was really one of those great bands. We wrote great songs, great players, and we made audiences happy.
What have you guys been doing? What can you take us musically? What you've been doing since the Call?
I jam with a lot of friends. I've done some little studio work here and there, no big deal. I kind of enjoyed moving back to the beach and getting away from kind of the music biz. And it's almost like life after, you're a pop star. You still have your music and your guitar, and so it's great. I'm enjoying this part very much, but the thought of going and playing live again is something that I really want to do with this band, and I hope there's an opportunity to do it now. Whereas Jim, he's all sorts of things. He's got a whole bunch of jobs. He sells real estate. He plays the keyboard. He's on the radio.
I'm 10 years younger.
He's 10 years younger. Go ahead and talk, Jimmy. Tell him what.
Well, yeah, I've got there's a radio station here in Central and Eastern Oregon called KJIV 96.5 FM Madras, and it's part of
well done, Jim.
It's part of a small a group of stations. Well, it's getting smaller every day, as it turns out, but that are in these very small markets between Reno and the Oregon-Washington border. It's called Jive Radio. So I get to do this volunteer. It's a community radio station, listener supported, commercial free station. And I get to do a Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 9 to noon. I do a thing called the Live Jive Show. And it's been really fun. I've been doing it for 5 or 6 years now, since just after they started. And I never used to listen to music because I was playing music all the time, and I just really didn't, just didn't want to listen to music because I was playing it a lot. And so I really got back into listening to music, and it's all Americana roots, all super eclectic. It's pretty much anything you can imagine, especially older stuff. But it's just been really fun for me to kind of just be a fan of music again and just listen to music. Nice. And then in headphones, I'm hearing stuff going on in these old songs by, the Kinks or Dylan or, Joel Sonier, we play him. Whatever it is, I'm hearing all this stuff in the headphones that are on all these tracks that I never heard before because I never really listened to this stuff that much. And if I did, it was, somewhere where I wasn't just sitting and listening to it. So it's been really fun to just get into listening to music and kind of being a fan of music. But interestingly, I was playing a lot of music up until COVID. I was in a country band here that was really fun and had played. I moved up here to Oregon in 2009, and I played with a bunch of bands when I moved up here because I wanted to meet people. And so that was fun. But I've got this gig that's coming up now that I'm the host. So I'm like the MC for this songwriters concert series that we're doing here at a little club called Frankie's. And some reason I agreed to do a show. And I've got these two artists, one's in Portland, Oregon, and one's in Los Angeles that I've been producing for a long time. You remember Robert Medici, Tom. Became a great songwriter. And so he's coming over for this show. We're doing it on March 14th. And this girl that I produce, she's an Irish singer from Dublin who lives in Los Angeles named Mairead. I've been producing her since 2004. And Robert at the time was my studio manager. I had a studio in LA. And so we're kind of having a reunion, and I've got to do 6 songs. We're each doing 6. And so 3 of the songs I'm doing are the call songs that I wrote with Michael.
Nice.
And I've never done that. I never sing for anybody. I'm not really a singer, but, and I'm not a solo performer. Scott does that a lot now. Scott Music, he's great at going out. He can do a show of his music anytime he wants. But I'm going to go and sing Jealousy and I Still Believe and The Woods with just a little piano thing. And maybe Robert and Mairead will add a little, percussion and background vocals or something. But I'm terrified, but I'm going to do it anyway because I agreed to do it. And but it's going to be, since I've been practicing singing these songs, it's been really interesting just to get back into and to get into them on that level where I'm actually singing the lyrics. So I'm really, really listening to the lyrics and remembering once again how lucky I was that Michael ever wanted to write with me. I'd give him the music and he'd write these lyrics that were just unbelievably good. And now that I'm singing them, I'm remembering just how lucky I was and how great these lyrics were. Mm-hmm. And there's times when I'm singing them when, like, especially in Jealousy, it goes into that part where he says, life don't end and love don't end. I feel need. And there's been a lot of times, especially when I first started doing it, where I'd go up there and sing, life don't end and love don't end. And I'm almost getting a little teary-eyed right now thinking about it, because I'd go to sing that line and I'd think about Michael and I just would start crying. Yeah. Just thinking about him and, missing him and remembering how wonderful those days were when we were doing those. And man, again, the guitar solo on the album in Jealousy, to me, is one of the best guitar solos ever by anybody, seriously. And it's just, man, that I have so many memories of us playing that song live and Tom doing his solo and Michael's voice and those lyrics. And man, I was just flooded with memories of us doing that song live and just remembering how powerful it was, as just for me sitting there on the stage with that band and being immersed in that stuff. It was that song, it brought back so many good memories. It's been fantastic. So I'm really looking forward to getting it over with and retiring.
Nice button, Jim. Nice button there.
Oh, that's the most honest thing I'll hear all week.
Gentlemen, I can't thank you enough. I reached out to Ken. It must have been close to 2 years ago now. And I'm like, when I started the podcast, I'm like, I want to get the call on. And we communicated a little bit and then just sort of fell off his radar. And then I found the Kickstarter thing and I'm like, now they're going to want to come on because they got something to promote. So I reached out to Ken again and I can't thank you enough.
It's true.
This has been awesome.
You're so welcome.
And Jeff, I appreciate fans. I just appreciate you guys. Thank you for this. Thank you for because I got to hear this stuff from Jim. Once again, we didn't talk a lot about what we did on records. We just kind of did it, and so that's something I miss. I really miss doing with Michael's. We never got a chance really to reminisce on how great we were. To sit around in a room and have a bottle of whiskey and tell stories about just what we had accomplished.
Well, I don't want to speak for Jeff, but we would be happy to host a round table with the three of you. If you want to just talk, we could go record by record,
Actually, one thing I want to thank you guys too for what you're doing, because we all know right now, it's always been the case, but right now, this world needs you got to bring whatever light you can to this world. Yeah. We do it through our music, and we're honored and we're lucky that we can do that. But you guys, doing podcasts and being fans of the music and studying the music and, conducting these kind of interviews and bringing this kind of information and all this stuff to the people, it's important work. I mean, it's great that you guys do what you do, and we're grateful that you're doing all the work you're doing and helping to just bring the light to this world, because we need it.
Beautifully said. Let's have a big group hug.
Thank you, Jim. That's very kind of you.
Thank you, man.
Totally true.
Yeah. All right, guys.
We appreciate you.
All right, guys.
Look forward to talking to you again.
Okay, thanks, take care, guys.
Thanks, Keith. Right. Thanks, Jeff.
As we go along. I wanna give out, I wanna give in. This is our crime, this is our sin. But I still believe, through the pain and through the grief, through the lies, through the storms, through the cries, and through the wars. Oh, I still believe.
Many thanks to Tom and Jim for carving out the time to talk to us. Although Scott didn't make it, he was there in spirit. Be sure to check out The Call on their Bandcamp page and check out the lost tapes. We've got a link in the show notes. You can also stream The Call wherever you stream your favorite music. Special thanks to Ken Drew for making it happen.
This episode of Abandoned Albums was written and produced by Keith R. Higgins and Jeff Calhoun. The show was recorded at Thunderlove Studio, where it was engineered by
Daphne Morris,
with help from
Penetration.
Abandoned Albums was edited by
Vic Titball,
with help from
Clem Fandango.
Our theme song is Solo Flight by Charlie Christian.
Original music by Mike Pellegrino.
In the opening of the show, the songs you heard were The Ballad of Peter Pumpkinhead by XTC, Never Say Never by Romeo Void, and The Walls Came Down by The Call. You can stream all of those artists wherever you stream your favorite music.
Original music by Mike Pellegrino.
The songs you heard during this podcast were Everywhere I Go, Welcome to My World, Oklahoma, What's Happened to You, A Beautiful Lie, The Walls Came Down, the live version of Let the Day Begin with Michael Bean's son, Robert Levon Bean on vocals, and lastly, I Still Believe. Please remember to support independent music.
If you like what you've heard, please remember to subscribe and leave us a rating. It helps other people find the podcast. Thanks for listening.
Grazie.
Bailey Leaf,
Rob Janicki, Mike Pellegrino, Thurina Bella,
Eric Beatner, S.W. Loudon, Ronnie Barnett,
Michael Janicki, Peyton Janicki, and our executive producer,
Rufus Thunderlove.
Abandoned Albums receives funding from Damon Pharmaceuticals, the makers of Ben Affleck. Ben Affleck is the only chewable tablet made to combat stomach unease associated with mediocrity. Taken daily, Ben Affleck can help combat explosive gastrointestinal shame. You can find a multitude of flavors in the incontinence section of your local pharmacy. Ben Affleck, save yourself the embarrassment.
The side effects include dry mouth, headache, anal leakage, muscle soreness, bad decisions, gender confusion, constipation, evil spirit possession, and banality. Use only as directed.
And now, until we meet again next time, I remain as always obediently yours.
Abandoned Albums is a production of Paw Print Media.
And now, a word from our sponsor.